go over it again because it's Stress Awareness Month, so we need to be aware. So the first thing is there's a conversation. How we make these hormones is the hypothalamus, which is our central nervous system in the brain, receives information from our eyes, our nose, our ears, our mouth that says, or are feeling, there is danger. So either there's a saber-toothed tiger running towards me, I can see it, or I can smell burning, or oof, that's hot. It receives information from outside that there is danger, danger. Then our pituitary gland, also in our brain, gets the messages from inside the body. So I really need a wee. My blood sugars have dropped. We're too cold. It will get the internal messages that there is an issue that we need to respond to. So when those two glands or nervous system get this information, they send a message down to our adrenal glands and tells the adrenal glands to make cortisol and adrenaline. Well, the neurotransmitter adrenaline tells them to make cortisol. So the adrenal glands make the cortisol, and the cortisol goes into the bloodstream, and then a message goes back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary and says, stop sending the memo, guys. I've done what you told me to do. Which is all very well and good. Apart from that was 20 minutes ago, and now something else has happened, so the memo has to happen again. And after a while, the message just stops coming back from the adrenal glands of stop sending the memo, because they're just getting this information constantly. And this is called a feedback loop, gets switched off. That's not a great place to be in, because what we're now getting is just this constant message of make cortisol, make cortisol, make cortisol, and the adrenals are making more and more and more and more and more, and our whole body gets full of cortisol. And this is essentially the source of inflammation in the human body. This is what causes, gut dysbiosis, leaky gut, inflammation that can lead to joint pain, neural issues, autoimmune diseases, cancers, gut problems, really bad perimenopause symptoms, cardiovascular disease, all of them, everything. Unless it's genetic, which only about 1% of conditions are, pretty much everything starts with inflammation. And the great thing is it's something that we can therefore change. So how do we do that? Well, we have to become aware of what is a stressor. Now, like I was saying, it's not always that the kids are shouting or that your partner's doing your head in. There is something a little bit more subtle. So Laura and I, she's not here today. Pretend she's here. Laura and I predominantly are kinesiologists, and in kinesiology, one of the reasons that I fell in love with it as a therapy is because we like to look at every angle. It's the ultimate whole body approach to health. So we work with what we call the realms, and so those realms are basically what makes up a human. So there's the biochemical. So we are biochemical beings, and we can have imbalances biochemically. So that would be deficiencies, it would be food intolerances, that kind of thing. There's the emotional realm, and that's pretty self-explanatory. There's the electrical realm, and a lot of people are quite surprised that our bodies run by electricity. Our muscles turn on and off because of electricity. Our brain uses electrical signals. Our heart is an electrical, runs electrically. So there's the electrical aspect. And then, of course, there's some of the more esoteric parts of that, depending on your belief systems. But, a lot of holistic practitioners would be talking about, chakras, auras, those kind of things. But if that's not your belief system, then you can ignore those and focus on the muscles. And then there's the structural realm. So literally our muscles, our, musculoskeletal system. And other things that come into that. So we work with something called the ileocecal valve. That would include things like, is your stomach in the right place? Have you got a hernia, teeth out of place, causing jaw imbalances, anything structural. So what would be a stressor? Well, I thought I'd break it down into those realms for you. So one of the big things that nobody really talks about, we could be as mindful as we like, but we are not going to reduce stress in the body if we are eating food we are intolerant to. That is 99% cause for most people, if they've not been working on this, for stress in the body. Now, food intolerances are huge. Now, I'm talking about subclinical intolerances, not allergies. These are intolerances that wouldn't show up on a blood test and so therefore get missed clinically a lot. Now, we work with what we call the hierarchy of food intolerances and gateway allergens. So a big gateway allergen would be wheat. Not all grains are the devil, but wheat really, really is. And it's because we hybrid that grain in 1969 and the gluten content literally went up tenfold. Is it tenfold? Yeah, tenfold. My maths is terrible. And then on top of that, so the gluten in Latin means glue. It sticks itself to our joints. It sticks itself to the inside of our bowel, and it is impossible to digest. Then in the 1980s, we started spraying it with a pesticide called glyphosate, and glyphosate's primary job is an antibacterial, but it's non-discriminatory. So that means it obliterates our gut microbiome. So this is a huge source of inflammation and leaky guts and autoimmune disease and all those things, is this bloody awful glyphosate. And it is now being banned in quite a few countries, but little old Blighty is very far behind on this issue. And I personally blame wheat intolerance and glyphosate as being, you know, like some of the main causes of ill health. And until someone actually stands up and starts looking at this from a sort of socio-political issue, then, you know, we're not going to see health getting any better. So definitely avoiding wheat. Now, the problem is that if you have been eating wheat for quite a long time and had this really awful issue, that your body will look at other grains and go, nope, that's too close to wheat. It looks like wheat. I don't know what to do with it. We call that a gluten cross sensitivity. And for a while, at least until your body rebalances, it might mean that you need to avoid all grains, but we're not saying that all glutens are awful. We just need to avoid the wheat. So food sensitivity. So wheat, milk as well, horribly processed, highly estrogenic, causes a lot of histamine imbalances, mucus producing, gut confusing, like it's just awful. Modern day milk is not food. It is not healthy. And the other big gateway allergen is sugar. That's no surprise, right? Like that's going to cause gut dysbiosis. It upsets your blood sugars, puts your body into adrenal stress. Like we know that is a very refined food that we don't even need in our diets. We need sugars, but we don't need the white stuff. Once people have actually eliminated those, you often see that other food intolerances change and symptoms go away. But if they don't, then we would then start looking at things like the nightshade family. So quite surprisingly to some people, peppers, tomatoes, aubergine, potato, chili. Now, of course, what's interesting about those is they could be in your diet every day. And this is my favorite phrase when I'm looking at food intolerances is, what are you eating every day? Because if you've got a symptom or, you know, something going on, it's got to be something you're doing to your body every day. It's unlikely to be the kiwi fruit you're only eating once a year. It's going to be something you're doing to your body every single day, which is why food intolerance is so key when it comes to stress. And then we look at eggs, because a lot of people are intolerant to the whites of eggs, not the egg yolk. It's actually the protective bit means we're not really meant to eat it. And then following on from that, nuts, because again, the brown bits on the outside of nuts, the phytates, are actually there to stop us from eating them. But I don't recommend eliminating all of those in one go, because life would not be worth living unless you've got a really chronic autoimmune condition. Well, let's go one at a time. Let's get rid of the wheat first. Then let's go milk if your symptoms haven't gone. And then, you know, we can start to work on which nightshade. You know, I can get away with potatoes once a week and tomatoes once a week. Peppers annihilate me, even just the smell of them. So you start to find out what your body can tolerate. So food intolerance, huge, one of the main stressors. Now, the reason why it's important to know about this is because life happens, right? Like stuff happens. My boiler broke the other day. It's blimmin' freezing in my house. I can show you. I actually have to sit here with the fire on. It's ridiculous. I was roaring a minute ago. Life happens. Stuff that is stressful happens, particularly at the moment. You know, we're coming to the end of this blimmin' awful pandemic and, you know, we're exhausted with it. And so we need bandwidth. I call it bandwidth. We need bandwidth to be able to cope with life. When we are dealing with internal stress, we've got no bandwidth left. We're not zen. Our body is already like this. So you add one little thing on top of it, like, you know, put a hole in your tights and you break a nail and it's the end of the world. Whereas when we don't have this internal stress going on all the time, we have more bandwidth and we end up a bit like Neo in the Matrix, where the stress is coming at us and we're like, okay, I can navigate this. I can handle it. This is then when your mindfulness, etc., is really helpful. So the next biochemical stressor that's really huge is chemical toxicity. And this is one of my soapbox issues. And this is the crap that we put into toiletries, that we put into makeup, and we have in our cleaning products that are all highly unnecessary. Now, these are actually often called endocrine disruptor chemicals. Now, your endocrine is your glandular system, your thyroid, your adrenals, your thymus, which is your immune system, your pituitary gland, your pineal gland, which regulates sleep and waking. If we're having exposure to endocrine disruptors, guess what's going to get disrupted? All of those things that we really need for optimum health. So cleaning up our toxic chemicals. The average woman uses 500 chemicals a day on her skin. That is frightening. So can you imagine that combined with wheat and milk? Like, how much bandwidth have we got to be able to deal with work or our kids? Like, we've none. We're just out. Like, our body is out. Then there's stuff that we can't necessarily control. So pesticides. And yes, we can choose to eat organic, but it's not always available, or we want to eat out and then there's no guarantee. So we're going to have exposure to pesticides. We're going to have exposure to pollution. Other things then that cause stress in the body, medication. And whilst that might be necessary for your health, it can also put a huge amount of stress on the body because of the side effects. Recreational drugs. I mean, you know, how much fun were the 90s? However, you know, come Wednesday, you could definitely tell your body was in a stress response. Synthetic supplements. People are buying supplements because they want to help their body, but if they're really cheap, they're not made, you know, properly, they're not bioavailable, i.e. they're not made with food, they're not food state, they're made synthetically. Again, they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on the body. So you're actually wasting your money. Outgassing from new furniture, new clothes, plastics, those kind of things, paint. Those contain all sorts of chemicals which will really affect and also be endocrine disruptors. Stimulants like caffeine, tobacco, alcohol. We think alcohol helps us unwind. Actually, it doesn't. It keeps us in this stimulated place. Something really big that we can't control is nuclear radiation. And you know, I heard this shocking statistic the other day, which was a few months ago now. I think I'm still shocked. Which was, we've launched nearly 2,000 nuclear bombs, literally blown up nearly 2,000 nuclear bombs on this planet. We're a hermetically sealed ball. Just because we've launched them in the ocean or over a desert doesn't mean that radiation hasn't gone anywhere. And oh my gosh, don't even get me started on Chernobyl or was it Fukushima. Like, you know, I watched that Chernobyl series and I saw that massive, you know, cloud of radiation going up into the sky, and what, that suddenly you can be 100 miles away from that? I don't think so. And maybe at the time because it was quite localized, but again, we're a hermetically sealed ball. And I heard somewhere, and don't quote me on this, but there's something like it takes 5 days for all of the air, it might be a bit longer, but it's a small amount of time for all of the air that's on the planet to go round the planet. So like in a certain amount of days, we've all breathed the air on the planet. So where's that radiation gone? It's gone into us. We know it's gone into us. Like, I honestly put, you know, a huge amount of increase in things like cancers and stuff down to this radiation that no one's really talking about. Then we actually have situations like the forever chemicals. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Dark Waters, but they talk about PTFE, the stuff that's on our Teflon frying pans and stuff, and just the shocking forever chemicals and how damaging they are to our bodies. It's also in stuff like WD-40 and GT85, which is a shame because that is what keeps your doors from squeaking, isn't it? Annoying. But highly toxic. So there is stuff that we can't help but be exposed to. Cosmic radiation. My dad's a rocket scientist. He's always gone on about cosmic radiation. And it's just, again, we can't control it. Nothing you can do, but maybe walk around covered in tinfoil. Not necessarily a good look. But yeah, this is stuff that's going on, in our bodies and around our bodies. Then we have poor quality water. Of course, there's a lot of contraceptive pill that gets into the water, like fluoride and all sorts that lives in water. And then you also have antidepressants. So poor quality water is a big deal. And plastics. Oh my God, all the bloody plastics that's in our water supply now. Demineralized food, because our food chains are awful and our soils are demineralized. Like, there's no worms pooping near our food anymore, so it's just got no minerals in it, and we know that our soils are horribly stripped, so we've got depleted nutrition. That's so stressful for the body, because without nutrition our body is in stress, right? And so therefore, of course, aggressively farmed food. So that's a lot of the biochemical issues. Quite sobering, isn't it? I don't mean to be dreary, but it is Stress Awareness Week, so let's be aware. So then let's work on, then we can go on to the emotional stuff. So relationship pressure, work pressure, financial pressure, family and parenting issues, health issues, concerns, grief or loss, fear from the media. And oh my gosh, haven't we seen that play out in the last year? Like, I don't know anyone who's not stressed from what we've seen go on around the world. Our emotional processes, baggage that we're dealing with and learning how to navigate, and all of that kind of stuff, they cause stress in the body. And then there's the electrical stuff. So this is where I'll be talking about the EMF radiation from all of our gadgets and our mod cons, microwaves, TV and devices, geopathic stress. So that's all to do with like the land and ley lines, and that can actually be I know my mum had a ley line running through our house, and you could literally feel like a current, like it was the weirdest thing. Things then also like body image and the pressure of the media, and just even wanting to fit our clothes after Easter. That's annoying. And then we would go on to structural stressors, and that would be things like being sedentary, horribly stressful for the body. We are not designed to sit all day. Postural issues. So like I've got a wonky leg because I've got a hip issue. So you wouldn't notice. I have a little heel riser in my shoe. But that in itself, when that's not there, huge amount of stress on my body. And I don't necessarily go, oh, my leg's wonky, I can feel the stress. Of course not. This is just an internal stress. And that actually then puts stress on my bowel and causes my ileocecal valve, which is a valve that separates the small and the large intestine, to become stressed and distressed, and ultimately any kind of pelvic imbalance can actually put your jaw out, and then you could be, biting your tongue all the time and causing all sorts of pressure and headaches. So then injury or birth defects, they can cause postural and structural stress. And things like clothes being too tight, shoes being too tight, causing us to walk strange, even causing things like bunions. All of these things are stressors in our body. And so in Stress Awareness Month, we need to become really aware of how many of these things are in our life and could potentially be contributing to us having symptoms, overwhelm, anxiety, like blood sugar instability is a huge biochemical one. So eating, poorly, and then our blood sugars going, crazy, will actually contribute to cortisol going to our body, and that will cause stress. These things, this is like the ultimate opportunity in Stress Awareness Month to take stock of your whole life. And yes, things like yoga, mindfulness, really important, but they're not the be all and end all. Eliminate foods that you think you're intolerant to. Get your diet under control. learning how to breathe deeply, learning to take time off, reducing the pressure. We can't do it all in one go, right? Step by step, step by step. I used to think I thrived on stress. Like I thought nothing of having a 2-year-old and knocking a house down and rebuilding it whilst running a business and teaching up in London and doing courses all at the same time. Thought nothing of it, apart from I massively crashed in 2014 and ended up in early menopause because of the that was the other thing I was going to tell you, the other model I was going to tell you. So I told you about the hypothalamus, pituitary and adrenals. That's called the HPA axis, this kind of conversation. And when it goes out of balance, it's called the HPA axis dysregulation. The other thing I didn't tell you was that when we're in a position of stress, the body won't make progesterone. It will stop making progesterone and turn it into cortisol instead. And the reason it does that is because it's more important to get away from the saber-toothed tiger than it is to hold a baby. Now, progesterone in a woman is our calming hormone. It's, you know, actually required for mood, to stop anxiety, for sleep, digestion, to get us into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our wind down and relax. Vitally important in women. And without it, all sorts of bother happens: infertility, period problems, estrogen dominance and weight gain, headaches, migraines, loads. And that's absolutely what happened to me. And I stopped making enough progesterone and ended up in a very early menopause, which has not been fun to navigate at all. But I truly believe that every condition has a blessing and has gold. And the blessing for me has been that, oh my gosh, have I learned about stress and overwhelm. And my boundaries now are so damn strong, because my bandwidth, I refuse to allow myself to get to the point where my bandwidth is taken up. So, you know, eating clean is a non-negotiable, because otherwise I'm going to get poorly, and there are no toxic chemicals in my house. And, you know, I do everything I can to reduce the stress in my day, and I make sure that there are gaps in my diary so I can have some chill out time and just sit and stare into space, and make sure I can exercise and do the right exercise at the right time of day. This has to be, for me, for the way that I have to manage my symptoms, has to be a whole health, whole body approach. So yes, learn mindfulness. Yes, you know, do yoga. Yes, go for a walk in nature. Yes, drink clean water. Yes, eat right. Yes, laugh, have sex, do all those amazing things, have a bath. But we can't do them in isolation. We have to find ways of building them into our life. And that goes against the grain of how society really validates being able to cope with stress and pressure. And the only way we're going to change that is by going, no, because it's not helping me. And you would be surprised how many things you can get rid of, because also there is something which is about, one of my favorite memes that went around on Facebook a few years ago was stop the glorification of busy. Because when we're busy, we feel important, we feel validated and useful. And actually, a lot of people say, I can't do nothing. I just feel useless if I'm doing nothing. And I'm like, that is definitely something important to learn to get over. So learning how to rest, learning how to allow yourself to go for a walk in nature, to not do the washing, to just be, absolutely vital. Actually, one of the things that I hear often from people who get diagnosed with a horrendous autoimmune condition or cancer is, oh my gosh, nothing else matters now. Nothing else is important. And that actually is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lesson. And it was totally my experience. And so if we can take the learning without having to go through that particular journey, if we can learn from, you know, those wise words, then we can start to clear our plates and to stop juggling and learn how to rest, because our bodies require huge amounts of it. And I think back to I often hearken back to my you know, our 1950s housewife ancestors. And you know, male's energy is very different to female's energy. Men have a very linear energy. That testosterone can just keep them running. They can keep going. They can keep going. Women, we're cyclical. We're cyclical. So even in a month, obviously, we tend to have 2 weeks where we have got loads of energy, and you know, just after we've bled, and loads of energy, and we're up and we're out and we're in the world and all the things, and then we start to be due on, and we're a bit crotchety, and then we're bleeding, and we just basically want to bury ourselves under a duvet and watch Netflix and eat chocolate. It's been years since I bled, so I can't remember, but apparently so. I'm told. But the problem is that society doesn't really recognize that, and also we're cyclical in a day. So if you think about it, I know that because of our ability to multitask, I'm not saying that men can't multitask, but women are particularly good at multitasking. We can tackle a huge amount of information and stuff coming at us. We're getting the kids ready, we're doing the food, we're listening to our husband, we're doing this, planning work, all the things, And then we often need a little bit of to allow it to all calm down. So I think back to, I always use my auntie as my vision for this. My auntie was a very definite 90s, 50s housewife, and passed away in her 80s. And she, you know, it would be very common that they'd be very busy doing the house, busy, doing all the cleaning. And I'm going to sit down on the sofa, listen to the radio, and have a cup of tea. Who the hell does that anymore? But we don't, do we? We don't just go, I'm just going to sit down and have a cup of tea, either with the radio on or in peace. No, we go, what's another job that I need to get done right now? So I would challenge you to not do that other job in Stress Awareness Month. I would challenge you to have that cup of tea and sit on the sofa. I would challenge you to start looking at what's really unnecessary in your life. How much are you doing because you feel you have to, out of fear, for validation? Like, be really honest with yourself. And how much of it do you really want to do because it brings you joy? It makes you feel elevated. It makes you feel connected. Really, how's about learning how to say no? That is huge. That's a big conversation in itself. So I think that's probably enough. I would, if any of that sounds, you know, like something that you could do with focusing on, then I would really recommend checking out online our symptom assessor, which is www.symptomassessor.co.uk, or go to balancewellness.co.uk, and you'll see our symptom assessor on there. And that actually starts to look at what's going on in your body with hormones, and which ones you need to balance first. Is it blood sugars? Is it stress? Like, what's going on? What's happening? And if it's the emotional stuff and you don't know how to say no, then I would really recommend our online program, Reclaim Your Life, which talks all about boundaries and how to come at stuff with grace and ease, and not doing things from duty and resentment. So hopefully you are now aware of all the stressors, and I'm hoping it's been a little bit illuminating, because most of them we don't think about. And yeah, I want you to really consider this bandwidth sort of scenario that I've used, because that for me is a really great thing. If you fly off the handle because something has happened, you haven't got the bandwidth. Like, if you're just melting down because something has happened, something little has happened, it's because you haven't got the bandwidth, and that suggests that there's too much stress going on in the body before life even happens. So I hope that's helpful. Please do get in touch with any of your questions. Hello, everyone who's been watching. Thank you for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you next time.